Okay, we begin the Mishnah on Daf Nun Aleph Amid Aleph. Like he saw me by the aim, if someone did not cover his pot of food before Shabbos for hatmana, to insulate the food. So then the halach is lo yechasenu mishetechshach. After Shabbos begins, you may not do any atmana of any sort, whether it's a atmana that's insulating it to maintain the heat, or it's a hatmana insulating it to even increase the heat. Either way, you're not allowed. As we learned already, I mentioned at the beginning of the Pedic, the distinction between atmana that's Meisef Hevel or atmana that's not Meisef Hevel is only regarding Erev Shabbos. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to do any atmana. Kisahu, if you did cover it before Shabbos, but when it's gala, at any point it got uncovered, then you are allowed to cover it again, even on Shabbos. Another halacha, the Mishnah says, Memale esakita, a person could fill a bottle of cold water, v'noisin letachas hakar etachas hakeses, and you could insulate this bottle of cold water, as Rashi here explains, that up until this point, and usually we talk about hatmana regarding insulating hot food, that it should remain hot. Here we're talking about a bottle of cold water, and a person is out in a place where it's hot and he doesn't want it to become, the water to become hot from the sun, so he insulates it in a pillow or a blanket to contain its coldness. So we'll see in the Gemara more about this right now. You're allowed to make hatmana with something cold to insulate and keep it cold. And as Rashi here explains, the chiddush of this din is that you would have thought that there's a gzeira. Just like Chazal said, it's not allowed to be insulating anything on Shabbos to keep it hot. And the reason is because a person might come to heat it up on Shabbos before he insulates it. So perhaps Chazal made a gzeira and they aser atmana altogether, even regarding something which is cold, to keep it cold. So Rav Yudah Mashmul says, to keep something cold is allowed. Rav Yosef, what's the chiddush? What's the chiddush that a person is allowed to maintain the cold through atmana, or even increase the cold if possible? What's the chiddush here? Tanina, we learned this clearly in the Mishnah here. Mamala adam kitin v'noisen tachas hakare tachas hakeses. A person is allowed to fill up a bottle of water and place it under a pillow or a blanket for atmana, for cold. Clear Mishnah. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye answers, Tuva kamashmalan. Rav Yudah Mashmul is teaching me a big chiddush. If it was only the Mishnah, I would think to say that the pshat is as follows. Hanemili, when does the Mishnah say this halacha, that you're allowed to insulate cold, you're allowed to insulate a cold bottle of water, davar she'ein darke lahatmen, because that's something that it's not the derech to be matmen. Meaning when it comes to a bottle of water, if it was hot, and you want to be matmen it, a bottle of water that you're matmen in a davar ha'meisef hevel, in a kind of insulation that's going to increase its heat, it's not going to be sufficient for a bottle of water. So therefore a bottle of water is not usually used in such a manner in atmana to be matmen, to increase its heat. So therefore regarding this, the Mishnah said that there's no gzeira of Chazal, and therefore you could do the atmana for a cold bottle of water. Aval davar shadar kelahatmin, but perhaps when it comes to a pot of solids, of food, which is more the derech to be matmin when it's hot in order to increase its heat. So maybe here Chazal wore geyser that you should never do any atmana for any solids, any foods, even when it's cold, so that you shouldn't come to do the atmana for when it's hot, because over there it is the derech to do it in a way that will increase the heat. So therefore, Rav Yudah Mashmul said, muter lahatmen es hatzainen, regardless of what it is, not only in the particular case that the Mishnah mentioned, which was a kitain, which was a bottle of water. Amar Rav Huna, Marav, also lahatmen es hatzainen. It's forbidden, or some other girsas over here, and he has it as Amar Rebbe. But Rebbe said that it's forbidden to be matmen tzainan. Chazal did make a takana, they did make a gzeira that just like you shouldn't be doing atmana for something which is hot, insulate for heat, so too they made the gzeira not to do it for cold. But we learned in a Braise, Rebbe hitelaten es atzainen. Rebbe said that it's allowed to do atmana for cold, like we learned in our Mishnah. Answers the Gemara, Loi Kashya. There's no question. Ha mikame de shame mi Rabbi Shmuel, as the Bach says, this is before he heard this halacha mi Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi, from Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yosi, and ha labasa de lishmei. And in the case where he said it's mutter, was after he heard the halacha as it was said in the name of Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi. And the Gemara brings the incident that happened. Kiha, the Yosef Rebbe V'Amar, Rebbe was sitting and teaching, and he said, it's forbidden to do atmana even for cold, to insulate the cold. Amalafan of Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi, so Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi said to him, Abba, my father, which is Rabbi Yosi, hit lahatmanas atzainen. He allowed to do atmana for cold, like it says in our Mishnah. So Rebbe responded and said, if so, kva hoyre zaken. So the elder sage Rabbi Yosi, which was before Rabbi, and he was a zaken, he already said the halacha, and therefore we can't go against him. Therefore he retracted his opinion. So therefore you have the two brises here, one that says that Rebbe was matter, and then later Rebbe retracted his opinion because of what he heard that Rabbi Yosi said. Rav Papa commented regarding this incident, come and see how much these Talmidei Chachamim cherish one another. Shila Rabbi Yosi Kayam, if Rabbi Yosi was alive, he would sit and be subordinate to Rabbi, just like Rabbi Shmuel, his son himself, did. As Rashi here explains, the Rabbi Shmuel b'Rabbi Yosi, the Memala Makam Avosav Hava, which filled the place of his father. Mamala Makim, meaning he totally filled the place of his father. He was a Talmid Chacham just like his father. The Kaf of a Yeshiv of the Rabbi, and he still sat subordinate in front of Rabbi. He was listening to him, and Rabbi was teaching. The Ka'amar, and nevertheless, what does Rabbi respond and says? Kvar hoyre zaken, that I'm going to listen to what Rabbi Yosi said. Rabbi Yosi already passed in the halacha that it's mutter, so I'm going to listen to him. So on one hand, Rabbi was the nasi, and he was the person that was teaching, and Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi was sitting like a Talmud bifnei Rabbi. But at the same time, though, when he brings up the opinion of his father, Rabbi accepted it, and Rabbi said kvar hoyre zaken. So we see from here how much the Talmidei Chachamim are mechavevin zeh ezeh. Sagt the Gemara weiter. Amalei Rav Nachman ledoru avde. Rav Nachman said to Doru, his servant. He wanted to teach him the halachas, so he told him as follows: Atmen litzainen, you can insulate for me cold foods. And what's one thing he told him? So he's showing him that that's allowed on Shabbos. And also you can bring me water, hot water, the achim kfeilar ma, which a goy, a kfeilar ma, which is a goy, heated up. So he's teaching him a second halacha that hot water could be heated up by a guy, and there's no issue of bishul akum, of a guy cooking the food for you. Shama Rabami heard this, ve'ikbid, and he said that this was not right. He was makbid on this. Why was he makbid? Omer Rav Yosef, my time ikbid. What's the reason why it was makbid? Why did he object this? Kerab v'seyavid. Didn't Rab Nachman do exactly like he learned from his own teachers? Chada, one thing that he did was kerav, that he heard from Rav, and v'chada k'shmuel. And another thing that he told his servant to do was like Shmuel. Shmuel, da'amar Rav Yudam Shmuel, motel hatman esatzainen. Like Shmuel, as we learned in the beginning here, that Shmuel said that in all circumstances, any kinds of food, whether it's water, whether it's solids and food in a pot, you're always allowed to do hatamana for cold foods. So what's the issue? Kerav, and also like Rav, Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak amar Rav, regarding the halacha of bishul akum, kol shu necha kamoishu chai, anything that's fit for eating as it is raw and it doesn't require any cooking, ein by mishum bishul inachrim. The takana of Chazal that a guy shouldn't cook the food for you, not allowed to eat bishul nachrim or bishul akum, does not apply to a case where the food is fit to be eaten raw. So of course water that can be eaten without you can drink it without cooking the water, without boiling the water, it's there's no issue of bishul nachrim. So what's the problem over here? It's the Gemara v'hu savar of Ami, which objected to this. He held Odom choshev shani. A prominent man like Rav Nachman is different, because if he's being matter this to his Eved may misunderstand and think that if this is mutter, if being matman b'tzayin is mutter, so then being matman b'chaman is also mutter. And if this kind of water is okay for a guy to cook for you, so then other foods are also okay. So therefore you have to be careful what you tell a person if you're an Adam Choshev. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Tan Rabbanon, we learned in a Braise, Afa Pisha Amru, although it was said that Ein Taim in a Philibadavasha Ein Moisef Havel Mishachashecha. You may not do any atmana on Shabbos itself, including in substances that do not increase the heat of the food, as we learned here in the Mishnah. In Bala Hoisif, Moisef. However, if you did that atmana before Shabbos, and now you want to add to this atmana on Shabbos, you're allowed. And what are we talking about? Adding in what kind of way? So what is he allowed to do? Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says, he could remove the sheets that he used to insulate the food. And instead, he could insulate it with glufkerin, which is a coat. So if he wants to have it better insulated, he can change the insulation. Or the opposite, he could remove the coat. And instead you can do the installation with sheets. Similarly, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel said another halacha pertaining hatmana. Lo yasru, the whole issur of atmana on Shabbos was only oisei mechem, if it's in the same kettle or in the same pot where the food was originally cooked. If you pour the water from one kettle to another, so then now that it's in a klisheni mutter, it's permitted to do hatmana with this food. What's the reason? So the Gemara explains, Hashta akuri kamekelo. If he's pouring it out to a second pot and now it's in a klisheni, he's cooling off the food. Artuchi kamirtachlo. Would you be concerned that he might heat up the food before atmana? As I mentioned, the only reason you're not allowed to do any atmana on Shabbos is because we're concerned that he's going to find his food to be too cold and not hot enough, and he might warm it up before he does that atmana on Shabbos. But over here, if he's pouring it into a klisheni, he's clearly not interested in heating it up further, and therefore he's then allowed to go and do that atmana on Shabbos. The Braisa continues, Toman v'kise bedovar anitel b'Shabbos. If you did that atmana and you covered it, so you did that atmana and you covered it as well with something which is nitel b'Shabbos, meaning a non-muktzah item. It's allowed to be moved on Shabbos. Or another scenario, Toman b'dovar she'ein nitel b'Shabbos. You did that atmana, meaning the insulation of the pot on the sides was done with something which is muktzah, it cannot be moved on Shabbos, but the kisa, the cover of the atmana that you placed on top of the pot, was b'dovar anitel b'Shabbos, was with something that's a non-muktzah item that you could move on Shabbos. So then, you have no problem. You can take out the pot, you can uncover it, and you could return it back even on Shabbos. How about Toman v'kisa b'dovar she'ein nitel b'Shabbos? How about if a person did atmana, he insulated the pot both on the side and on the top as well with something which is b'dovar she'ein nitel b'Shabbos, which is muktzah. Or he did atmana and he insulating the pot on the sides with something which is not muktzah, but v'kisa b'dovar she'ein nitel b'Shabbos. He covered it with something that's muktzah, that it may not be moved on Shabbos. So what do? How do you get your food out of your pot if it's in a muktzah item, whether all around it's muktzah, or at least on the top, on the cover, it is a muktzah, the material used for the atmana is muktzah, so how do you use that on Shabbos? So if the pot was partially uncovered on the top, so then noitel umachser, he's allowed to take it. He could open up that part of the pot which is exposed, and then he can remove it and return it as well. And if none of it is exposed, so then so then he's not allowed to remove the pot and return it because there's muktzah there. So then he can't get his things out of the pot. There's no way for him to access it. Weiter the Braisa continues. Rabbi Yehuda says, Na'oires shall pishton daka. The splinters that come out of the combings of flax that are fine splinters, arehi kezevel. That is like manure, which if you do the atmana in it, it's meisav hevel, and you're not allowed to do the atmana in this even from before Shabbos. We had this before in a Mishnah. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Further, the Mishnah, the Braisa that is continues, another halacha, and we had this also quoted in the beginning of the Perek here, Manichem mecham al gabe mecham. You're allowed to place a hot kettle of water on top of another hot kettle of water. or kedera al gabi kedera, and a pot of hot food on top of another pot of hot food. Avol, now this is the girsa that we have here in our Gemara, but Rashi says that you take out the avol loy. And just like it said that you can put a mecham on a mecham, and you can put a kedera on a kedera, you continue, and so too a kedera al gabi mecham, you can put a pot on top of a kettle, umecham al gabe kedera, and you can put a kettle on top of a pot. Okay, now the chiddush over here, as Rashi explains, is there's a difference between a kettle and a pot. A kettle, which is a metal kettle, is not as hot as a pot that's made of cheres, of earthenware, that maintains the heat much more. So therefore, the chiddush over here is that you're allowed to put either one on top of another. Although you're putting a kettle on top of a pot and the pot is much hotter, you're allowed to put the kettle on top of the pot. I'm sorry for the noise. I'm over here in a place where you're going to have this noise for about 10, 20 or 30 seconds, and then we'll continue inside. Okay, the Braisa continues, V'toch es pia bebatzeik, and you could seal the vessel closed with dough, that it should be properly sealed. V'loi b'shvil sheyichamu, ela b'shvil sheyiyu mishumarim. You're not doing this in order to heat them up. In other words, we're not talking over here about a person that takes a cold vessel and places it on top of a hot pot, but it's only there to maintain the heat. This is the end of this din of the Braisa. Now the Braisa continues, the kishem she'ein taimnin es achamin, kach ein taimnin es atzainen. Just as you're not allowed to do atmana for hot foods, so too you're not allowed to do atmana for cold foods. Okay, just a moment. Sorry about that. It's pretty loud, I know. Okay, I make sure Mitzvah Shem next time to be in a different location so this doesn't happen. Okay, the Braisa continues. Rabbi hitil hatmanis atzainen. And this we had quoted before. Rabbi says, like it said in our Mishnah, that hatmana for cold foods is allowed. The Braisa continues with another halacha which is unrelated to the concept of atmana. Ve'ein meraskin, you're not allowed to crush loyas hasheleg, not snow, v'loyas habarad, and not hail b'Shabbos b'shvil sheyizuvu meimav. In order to have the water come out, the water flow out, so you should be able to drink the water. And Rashi here says that the issue is moilid, that you're not allowed to take something that's unfit for consumption and creating something new on Shabbos, making it fit for consumption to have the water to drink from it. That's the pshat that Rashi says over here. Other Rishonim say, the Ranir says that it's similar to the malacha of schita or dosh, where you're removing and taking out the water that's been frozen, you're melting it and taking it out and then being able to eat it. Avol noisenu l'teicha kais or l'teicha kaira, but you're allowed to take ice or snow, or for that matter ice cubes, and place it into a cup of water or into a bowl of liquids, ve'ena chayshish, and there's no concern as long as it's happening on its own. You just take it and place it there, and then inside the liquid it dissolves and it melts on its own, that's fine. But if you go by hand and actually are melting it and taking out the water, that's a problem. Hadran Allah b'met taimnin, hadran Allah b'met taimnin, hadran Allah b'met taimnin. This concludes the Pedic of b'met taimnin. We begin now a new Pedic which discusses the halachas that pertain to Haitzah Mirishus HaYachid L'Rishus HaRabim. The next two prakim are going to be discussing primarily these halachas of carrying from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. When it comes to carrying from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, something which serves as a garment is allowed to be carried, but something that's just a masa, it's just a load that you're carrying, but it's not a garment that you're wearing, you're not allowed to carry into the Rishus HaRabim. So the Mishnah is going to describe many different things, whether it's considered to be a beged or it's only a masa, if it's just a weight that you're carrying is something that's not allowed to be carried in the Rishus HaRabim. It's just a burden, and so on. Now, but in this Perek, it begins with the halachas of carrying into the Shus Harabim as it pertains to a behema, to an animal. The halacha of resting on Shabbos applies even to a person's animal as well. As Taisus over here brings right in the beginning that it says, L'man yenuach shercha v'chamercha, which refers even to shvisas behemtai, that your animals also have to rest on Shabbos. And there are other Rishonim that say that there's also the loisese of leisasa malacha ato behemtacha, and that also refers to the fact that a person may not have his animal do any malacha on Shabbos. The Taisus here says that that's not the case, that lav goes on something else. So there's a difference of opinion in Rishonim exactly whether it's only an asay or a loisese as well, not to allow your animal to do malacha on Shabbos. There is one opinion actually, it's a minority opinion. The Pnei Yeshua says that the issur to have your animal carry on Shabbos is not min haTorah, it's only a takonim d'Rabbanan. Min haTorah, you're not allowed to have your animal do other malachas, but the malacha of hitzah, he says, is only d'Rabbanan. But most Rishonim and Achreinim disagree with this and say that an animal doing malacha for you on Shabbos, including carrying, is a issur min haTorah, learned either from the esse of L'man yenuach or from the lois esse of loisasa malacha ato v'hemtacha. So let's see over here in the Mishnah the different things that you have with an animal carrying on Shabbos. In certain cases it's allowed, in certain cases it's not allowed. In this Mishnah it begins discussing those different things that are used when you walk out with an animal on Shabbos and you have to have something to restrain the animal from not running away. So if you're using it to restrain the animal, that's not considered to be that the animal is carrying something on Shabbos. But if it's not needed to restrain the animal, so then it is considered to be that it's carrying on Shabbos. Let's see inside. Zok the Mishnah, Bameh, Behema Yoitze, or Bameh Eine Yoitze. With what is the behema allowed to go out on Shabbos, and with what is it not allowed to go out on Shabbos? Yoitze Hagomol Ba'afsar. A camel could go out on Shabbos with an afsar, a halter, to restrain it. The naka, as we'll see in the Gemara, a naka is a white female camel, can go out bechatom, which the Gemara will explain what a chatom is. The luvdekim, and the luvdekim, which the Gemara will also explain what exactly luvdekim are. The prumbia can go out with a prumbia, also explained in the Gemara. The sus, and a horse can go out b'sheir, with a collar that is placed around its neck that is used also to restrain it. V'chol balei asher, all those animals that usually wear this collar around their neck, yaitzim b'sher, are allowed to go out with this collar on Shabbos, v'nimshachim b'sher, and you can also lead them, you can go around with them on Shabbos with this collar. And now the Mishnah finishes off with the unrelated halacha, Minigeh to this sher, minigeh to this collar that the animal wears, umazin aleyen, and when you're using the hazah of the mei chatos of the para aduma, you could do the hazah onto this collar of the animal. If it got tummy and you want to be metired, you can do the hazah on this collar even while the animal is wearing it. You don't have to remove it. V'toivlan b'mekayman, and also Tvila, if you want to be toivel this collar, you can be toivel it even while the animal is wearing it. When the animal goes into water, and the collar also goes into the water, and it's fine, it's okay. Okay, so that's a halacha b'negei to tumah, a separate thing. Now, just going back a second to what the Mishnah says, v'chol bali asher yotzim b'sher v'nimshachim b'sher. So as I mentioned, the simple pshat of this Mishnah is, it's talking about a collar that's worn by the animal, by the horse, or any other animal, and then there's a rope that's tied to it, that's used as a leash or whatever it is to restrain the animal. So there's a famous pshat that Alter Rebbe brings in Likutei Torah that you can read the Mishnah not Chol Bali Asher but Chol Bali Ashir, that people that sing, that with the koyach of shir, to sing a song, yaitzim b'shir v'nimshachim b'shir. You can leave through a song, you can draw down through a song, meaning that through song, which has a koyach of simcha and a koyach to go out from all your limitations. As we know, simcha paid together, takes a person out of his limitations. You can draw down the greatest revelations through singing a song and through simcha. Sagt the Gemara, "Mai naka b'chaitem." What is naka or chataim? What does this mean? Amar Rabba bar Chana. So Rabba bar Chana said, "Naksa chivarti." It's a white female camel, bizmama de parzela, which is used with a zmama de parzela, meaning a nose ring of iron, Parzal is iron. Mama is a nose ring. Parzal is iron. So they attach they attach this nose ring, and then from there, they have a leash that's connected to it to lead this this female camel. So as we'll see soon in the Gemara, what's the significance of all of these details? Very important. The Mishnah is not just telling me what is used for what. It's very, very specific. When it comes to a gomal, a camel, so then an afsar, the halter, is good enough to restrain it. When it comes to this female camel, it's actually wilder. Or at least it goes away, it can flee from its owner quicker. So therefore you have to have a better restraint. And that better restraint is by having a nose ring, and that restrains it even better than the afsar. Okay, so keep this in mind. The chatam is a stronger restraint than the afsar. Next thing it said in the Mishnah, luvdikim beprumbia. What are luvdikim and what is prumbia? Rav Huna said, chamra luba. These are donkeys that come from the place called Luv, or Luba. Taisus here actually says that this refers to donkeys that come from Luba being Mitzrayim. And he brings the source from a pasuk that Lubim could refer to Mitzrayim. So these donkeys that come from Mitzrayim, which was stronger and which they needed a bigger restraint. What's the restraint that they need? The page de parzala. A bit, that is. The page is a bit, an iron bit. That's what's used to restrain them. Okay? Now the Gemara says, Levi Shadar Zuzi Lebei Chuzoi. Levi sent money to the people of Chuzah. He wanted to have them lemizvan le chamra luba, that they should buy him this donkey that comes from Luba, that comes from Mitzrayim. Tzaru, they tied his money. Shadrule, they sent it back to him. Sari, together with barley. What was the message they were sending him? Lemeimar, to tell him the nigri de chamra, the steps of a donkey. In other words, the energy that a donkey has to walk, sari, comes from barley. So Rashi here explains, instead of wasting your time having us get you a donkey from Mitzrayim, which is a trip of 6 months to go from Bavel to Mitzrayim, as Rashi brings from the Gemara in Baba Kama, it takes that long to go from Mitzrayim to Bavel. Forget about that. They're giving him the advice, have your donkey eat a lot of barley all the time, because that will give him the proper energy that it needs, and it will be as strong as these luvdiki, as these donkeys that came from Mitzrayim. In front of Rebbe, they switched the cases of what it said in the Mishnah, and they asked the question, Shalzu bizu mahu. What's if you switch the kind of restraint between the different donkeys or camels, actually, that we were talking about over here in the Mishnah? So we had the regular camel that uses an afsar, that uses a halter. And then you have the female camel that uses a chataim, which is a nose ring, which is a stronger restraint. So what happens if you do it the other way around? For a camel, the chataim, and from the naka, for the female camel, an afsar. Is there any difference over here between the two? So the Gemara explains. Naka ba'afsar, if it's the female camel, which, as I explained before, the female camel requires a stronger restraint. So if you're using for the female camel a afsar, a halter, which is a weaker restraint, which is insufficient for this animal, for this female camel, like tibayalach, there's no question that you're not allowed to carry that out. You're not allowed to have the animal go out with that on Shabbos. Why? Even the since it's not effective to restrain it, masiyu. So then if it's not a restraint, so then it's just something that it's carrying as a burden. And it's not allowed to carry this on Shabbos. Ki to bayalach. When is there a question? The other way around. Gomal, when you have a camel, bachataim, with a stronger restraint in this nose ring, it doesn't need such a strong restraint. A regular afsar, a halter, is good enough, but if you're using for the camel an even stronger restraint, then it's necessary, what would be the halacha? Kiven, would I say, Kiven the sagile ba'afsar, since an afsar is good enough for a camel, masihu, so since you're using an extra restraint, an extra strong restraint, so therefore it's just a burden and it's not something that's needed to restrain it, so therefore it can't walk out with that on Shabbos. After all, you are using it as a restraint. The fact that it's an extra restraint, that doesn't matter. That's not considered to be a burden that it may not carry on Shabbos. Amalafanov Rabbi Shmuel but Rabbi Yosi. So Rabbi Shmuel but Rabbi Yosi was sitting in front of Rabbi and said as follows: Kach Omar Abba. This is what my father said. Arba behemois yotzais ba'afser. There are 4 animals that are allowed to go out with an afser, with the halter. What are these 4 animals? A sus, a horse, a pered, a mule, a gomel, a camel, a chamoyer, and a donkey. That was the statement that he said. Lemute mai, when he said that they can go out with a halter, what was he coming to exclude? Lav, don't you think? Lemute gomel b'chataim. What he was coming to say is, but a camel that does not need a stronger restraint, like this chataim, this nose ring, if it goes out with that, it's not allowed. He specifically wanted to say that these animals can go out only with the afsar and not with a stronger, unnecessary restraint. Then it becomes just a burden. Answers the Gemara, no, not necessarily. Loi lumuute nakabafsar. We can say that what he was saying was these 4 animals can go out with the regular restraint of the afsar, but a naka, which is the female camel that needs a stronger restraint, if you're going to use a restraint that's insufficient for it, so then it's just going to be a burden because it's not even doing its job. It's not restraining it. That's what it was coming. That's obvious, and we can say that's what it came to exclude. But we don't have a proof from here regarding the restraint of a gomel if you use a stronger restraint that's necessary. Gemara quotes a braise, masnite tana. We learned in a braise, luvdekim v'gomel, both the luvdekim, which are the donkeys that are brought from Mitzrayim, as we said before, and the gomel and the camel, yaitzim ba'afser. They can go both out with an afser. So the luvdekim, in our Mishnah, it said that the luvdekim uses a bit, a metal bit, which is a stronger restraint than the afser. So you may think that the luvdekim, if you're using a weaker restraint, if you're using an afser, we'll see soon in the Gemara, that the prumbia, this bit, this iron bit, is a stronger restraint than the afser. So you might think that the afser is insufficient for the luvdekim, but that's not the case. The Braisa here says that luvdekim and gomel can both go out on Shabbos with an afser. Now the Gemara returns to the shaila that we asked, which is, if you're using a restraint for an animal stronger than necessary, is that going to be a burden, and therefore you're not allowed to walk out with it on Shabbos that way, or no? Since after all it's being used as a restraint, it's not an issue. The fact that it's stronger, it doesn't matter. Kit tanoi, this seems to be a machlekes of tanoim. It says in one braisa, ein chaya yaitze b'seiger. An animal is not allowed to go out with a collar of rope to restrain it. That's one braisa. Chananya says, yaitze b'seiger, it's allowed to go out with this collar of rope to restrain it. Ubechol dover amishtamer, or with anything else that restrains it. So the Gemara wants to understand, what is the argument here? V'maya skinon. What are they arguing about? Are we talking about a large beast, like a bear, for example? Rashi says, misagi leisaiger. This collar of rope would be enough to restrain it. It's totally insufficient. So for sure, everybody should agree that you're not allowed to walk out with it. So rather, what are we talking about? A small beast, like a little weasel or something. Isn't this perfect? Isn't this sufficient to have it restrained? So then what would be the reason of the opinion that says that you're not allowed to walk out with it on Shabbos? So rather, the way to explain the machlokes here is chatol. The argument here is regarding a cat, using this restraint for a cat. Tanakama Savar, the Tanakama says, Kivin the Sagilo b'misna ba'alma, since for a cat which has a tendency to stay with its owner and not to run away, so therefore, as Rashi here explains, so therefore Sagilo Mimisna ba'alma, just any cord to hold on to it would be sufficient. So now that you put this a collar of rope, which is more than what it needs, masihu, so therefore it's considered, the Tanakama says that it's considered to be an extra burden. It's more of a restraint that it needs, and therefore it's carrying on Shabbos. Chananya Sovar, and Chananya says, Kol nitirusi yiseirta loy amrinon masihu. Even if you're using a restraint that's an extra restraint, an unnecessary restraint, that does not make it into a burden. After all, you're using it for a restraint, and therefore it's allowed to carry it on Shabbos. So here we see that it's a machlokes tanoim regarding using an extra restraint that's not necessary. Amar Avuna bar Chia, Amar Shmuel, halacha ke Chananya. The halacha follows the opinion of Chananya. that an extra restraint is not a problem. You're allowed to have your animal go out with it on Shabbos. The Gemara shares an incident. Levi berei de Rav Huna bar Chia. So Levi, the son of Rav Huna bar Chia, that just said that the halacha is like Hananya, that it's allowed. So he was once traveling on the way. Rabbi bar Rav Huna, together, or both him and Rabbi and bar Rav Huna were traveling. Havaka Ozli Borcha, were traveling on the way. Kadmei chamra de Levi lechamra de Rabbi bar Rav Huna. So Levi's donkey went ahead and skipped Rabbi bar Rav Huna and went ahead of him. Chalash daite the Rabbi bar Rav Huna. So Rabbi bar Rav Huna, that was much greater than him, had a bad feeling about this, that why is Levi jumping ahead of me on the road and not giving me the proper honor that I deserve? Because he was under the impression that Levi did this purposely. Omar, so now Levi noticed what happened. Omar, so Levi said to himself, Emile Milse, let me say something to him. In order to calm him down, in order to appease him. Amalei, so he says to Rabbi bar Rav Huna, Chamoir sha'asakav roin. If you have a donkey that has bad behavior, it's wild, like my donkey. In other words, he was trying to tell Rabbi bar Rav Huna, I didn't do this intentionally, my donkey is wild and ran ahead. Is it allowed for this donkey to go out with this metal bit that restrains it on Shabbos? Okay, so the prumbia is stronger than an afsar. Usually a donkey only is allowed to go out with an afsar. But the question is, what if it's a wild donkey, is it allowed to go out with it on Shabbos? Amalei, so he answered him, Hochi yomer avuch. What did your father say? Mishmei de Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel. Halacha kechananya. Your father said in the name of Shmuel that the halacha is like Hananya, which means that it doesn't matter if it has an extra restraint. Even if it has an extra restraint, an unnecessary restraint, it's not considered to be carrying. So either way, you would be allowed to use this prumbia, which is a stronger restraint, for your donkey, even if we're going to say that usually a donkey only needs an afsar. That's the conclusion of the Gemara for today. But before we finish, let me just mention an interesting thing, which we learned already in the Gemara of Brachas. The Gemara in Brachas said in Daf Mem Zayin that on the road, there's no idea, there's no mitzvah to give kavod for a teacher, for someone that's greater than you. The inyan of giving kavod is only inside of a house or in a place where in a besmedrash or so on, but not when you're going on the road. And b'pashtus, the reason is when you're going on the road, if you're going to have to give honor for different people, so then it's going to cause a traffic jam when you have to stop things to give honor. So the question over here is, if so, why did Rabbi bar Rav Huna have a kpeda? Why would he cholish daite? Why was he upset about the fact that Levi's donkey went ahead? It's on the road, and on the road it doesn't matter if it goes ahead. So there are a few pshatim in this. According to Rashi, the Achreinim say the pshat is that there's no inyan to give kavod, which means you're not going to stop traffic in the middle of the road to allow a rebbe or a sheshiva or whoever it is to go by. But that cause a traffic jam, be impossible. But on the road, when you have someone that's greater than you that's traveling, don't jump ahead of him. Jumping ahead of him is a bizayon. You mevaza him. You're skipping him in the traffic. That is not allowed even on the road. That's one pshat. Another pshat is, and Tosfos here says, that when people are heading out on a trip together in a group, so over here, within the group, even on the road, the person that's greater has to be ahead of everybody else. And over here, they were heading out together on the road in a group, and therefore, he should have allowed him to go ahead of him, and therefore Rabbi bar Rav Huna cholish daite. And he explained to him that it didn't happen bedafke, it just happened on its own because he had a wild donkey. Okay, have a very good day, everybody. Atzlacha Rabbah.